Well, good afternoon, everybody, and I hope you're having a great afternoon session here at OER 21 and Domains. I'm delighted to be introducing Melissa in this session, who's going to talk about if you build it, will they come? The challenges of building a communal OER. So over to you, Melissa.
Hello, thank you and good morning. I'm coming to you, and I think I'll go quickly here. So good morning, it's actually morning here in British Columbia, very early morning. But thanks for coming to this session, and someone else will be monitoring the chat. Anyway, good morning. Melissa Ensquist. I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that I'm coming to you from the traditional lands of the Tecumseh to Jakubec in our Kamloops campus, and the Tekelk, our Williams Lake campus. Within Secwepemc Ulu, the traditional and unceded territory of the Secwepemc, I am grateful for the Secwepemc Nation's generosity and hospitality while I live, learn, and work in their territory. And I was born in and lived most of my life in Secwepemc Ulu, so I really do think this term and description really captures the land that I feel I'm from. I'm here to talk to you today about a project that I started when I was on sabbatical a few years ago. I wanted to build an open educational resource repository of learning activities. And I started by looking at what current resources were available at the time. And you know, there are a variety of different resources around. University of Waterloo here in Canada has a resource. It basically has a lot of documents, resources, and explanations. UBC's Teaching and Learning Resources portal also has a wiki, an extensive list, bibliographies, but not really examples. The University of Central Florida's Blended Learning Toolkit, again, some examples, but not many, and a focus on explanation and course level templates. At the time, I was the Provost Fellow for Blended Learning at TRU in Kamloops, and I was trying to promote blended learning across campus. So a lot of it was just explanations and not a lot of actual practical examples that people could then use and adapt. And I noticed that these three resources were all sort of static resources, but they weren't really communities of practice that anyone else could contribute to. So I started doing a bit of research, and a study by just looking at what are the issues around reuse and the difference between something being open and being used. And I found a lot of the so-called open resources, once you dug, everything was in a PDF or a website, and it wasn't really that easy to adapt and reuse. And as Wills and Pegler noted in their study, the widespread use of digital online resources in technically efficient ways has often been described as a holy grail within e-learning. So I started to look for that holy grail, and they noticed in their study a bunch of factors that influenced whether or not an OER was actually reused. And I picked out 4 of these as being particularly important, and then considered those when I was developing the design for my resource. And these factors really that I thought were key were a common e-learning platform, making sure that the license to use was really clear, and a description so that students were scaffolded through all the steps of the learning activity. And then collaborative design, including some sort of role for educational developers. So sharing and knowing that someone had actually really thoughtfully looked into the design of those activities. So as I said, Will's study, despite being based on the single design of role play, it actually points the way to learning designs representing the most effective reuse strategy. So I was looking at trying to create a learning design activity bank that could be adapted and reused. I drew on my past as an ESL teacher. I spent 15 years and ended about 16 years ago, but a good portion of my foundational career in education was based in ESL. And in ESL, we use educational resources really widely. And any of you from the UK may be well aware, because many of these come from the UK. So these are some of the books that I drew on very, very heavily in my teaching to help with lesson planning. And what are the characteristics? I found that they identified the additional resources you needed, any materials you needed were probably included. They told you what level of English acquisition the activity was aimed at. It told you what the purpose was. Was it to practice the present perfect? They were searchable by index and chapter, and they didn't require a lot of extensive research or expertise to be able to use them. So I took all of that into the design decisions to make the resource. And I decided that making my resource would be an open, web-based resource, that I would have clear categories, that I would provide examples to serve as learning designs for activities that could be adapted, and that I would enable contributions and comments from people who were using the resource. And then it was really important to me to make the Creative Commons licensing clear. So I started by looking at what kind of interaction was within each activity. And this led me back to this diagram based on Garrison's community of inquiry model, showing how learners might interact with either the content, the context, or other supporting individuals in their learning activities. So that led me to design in the resource the ability, when you're entering a resource, to choose the type of content the learner is interacting with within the activity. And you can choose the one that's most relevant to the activity, but you can choose multiple. So the learner and the content, they might be doing a reading and watching a video. If they're interacting with their context, it might be field work that they're doing, but they might also have another interaction with a different resource as well. So that was one aspect. Another one was just the activity structure. So was it an individual activity? Was it a paired activity, group, team, or a plenary activity? And making sure that people and the activities were clearly described with regards to what kind of people were needed for it. I also incorporated the new version of Bloom's taxonomy so that your activity could say if it was actually analyzing or was it understanding, and you might be able to have more than one of these in an activity, especially if it's a staged scaffolded activity where the students might first be recalling information and then they're actually analyzing or creating something afterwards. And then I thought it was important for people to be able to search by academic discipline as well. So I started out with just the basic arts and humanities. And since then, I've used tags to allow people to add additional information, like is the activity related to indigenization or a specific field within arts and humanities, like history or psychology, to make things easy to research. And then, of course, it's really important to make sure that the Creative Commons licensing is clear. And for all the activities that I've contributed, I wanted to make sure that it allowed that remixing, so people could use whatever, change it, alter it, share it back to the resource, and carry on. And part of what I looked at then when actually building the platform for the website was a conference that we'd held here at TRU, sorry, where they developed a website. Now my voice is going. Sorry about that. That supported the conference and the community. People could contribute resources there, and there were larger categories, and it allowed discussion, but it wasn't searchable, and you would have to go through a lot of scrolling through posts, which could become very time-consuming and unproductive. So what we did in the end was adapt. I had a very talented technical colleague of mine, Troy Welch, who works here as an innovations developer, and he used Toolset within WordPress to create the actual website, which you can see the welcoming landing page for here. Now, despite all of this, and I've gone to several conferences promoting this resource, CNIE and Banff and UBC, the Teaching Practices Colloquium that we hold locally here at TRU, BC Campus. It's been in OER repositories. One of our course redesign sites that's being developed, Cricket, is going to be incorporating it. And we had some research assistants who helped add activities, but still I really have no idea if the resource is being used. And to be honest, I don't think anyone other than myself have contributed activities to it. So that's sort of where I've gotten to with the project. And I'm really curious if anyone has suggestions for how to make that more to get more people actually contributing. So I think I'm still after the Holy Grail. I hope it's being reused, and I know we share it with our subject matter experts when we're developing courses here at TRU Open Learning, but I don't know that anyone's contributing, not so far anyway. So I will stop sharing my slides, and then if anyone has any suggestions, and I will try to switch to the actual resource just to give you a sense of how it can be. Yes, I did have a reference on that last slide. I'll copy it and put it in the chat in a moment. Okay, so you should be able to see the website now. Yes. So just to give you a sense, here you can search very easily. So maybe you want to look for a case study and you're hoping they're evaluating, or maybe it might be easier to go for a case study in business. And then submit. And it'll give you all of the results for that. So managing events, this is an online discussion. And you'll notice here, I was very deliberate about this. So the full text upload is here and it's in a doc file. So you can edit it. And then people can add activities very easily. Put in your activity, any tags you want, choose files. And for all the activities, if there was a related video, if it wasn't Creative Commons, I provided the URL. If it was something that we had in TRU that we owned, I've uploaded the resource here. You can pick your license and attribution and submit. Okay, so I know that time is short, so I'll just take a minute if anyone has any questions, and I'll just post the reference for that. I should stop sharing now.
Yeah, and also I think we might need to put it in the YouTube chat as well after the session, Melissa, as well. I think though a lot of the other references are probably in the abstract that's in the conference guide as well. So if people can
it actually is in the abstract. You're
there
correct.
if you want to, but we'll put them in Discord so everyone will be able to see that. I think there's been quite a few comments, and I think there's been quite a lot of nodding of heads for many people in the session about getting people to share activities. Alan and has said that. I'm with you there, Alan. I have struggled for much of my career trying to get people to share things, and Laura's asking about how you're expanding the community. And how maybe there need to be champions to share the value and communicate it, and actually have sessions that kind of make, I don't want to say make, but actually encourage people to share their designs in a warm and friendly environment. Although that is slightly more challenging now that we're online, but there's still ways we can do it. But I think a lot of it does come down to really a lot of community building, doesn't it? So I don't know if you've tried, if you've probably tried that, but you can.
Well, yeah, I mean, I did a hands-on workshop at CNIE in Vancouver a couple of years ago, and Rajiv Janjani, you know, he's aware and he's a great champion, and his wife was in the session, and even then it was like, yeah, I don't think anybody actually went home and added. So in a way, virtually, if you had people, you know, at home, and they had all the resources at their fingertips to be able to add while you were doing a session, that might actually be easier. But and to be honest, I think we all have to be very cognizant of the fact people are just tired after a year of pandemic, and before that they were busy. So I think that's part of it, is just it takes time to go in and add something, right? So this isn't what people think of immediately. So I hope people are at least using it, but at least now, hopefully more people know about it. Please do add. If you have an activity you'd like to add, it would be wonderful to see that. And please do use the activity if you find the resource, if you find it useful. It's essentially built from a bank of, you know, successful learning activities from open learning courses.
Yeah, I think there's also, just so we get some other questions here, I think there's sometimes a reticence from people to share their activities. And I think it's more about, oh, well, it's good enough for me and my class, but I'm not really sure if it's good enough to share with the world. And I always say to people, if it's good enough for your class, then it's good enough for any class. So I think there's a confidence thing there as well. But there's a really interesting question coming through here as well, and asking, have you got students to add in, or trying to get students to add anything to the repository or activities that have maybe worked for them or that they're generating or creating?
I haven't, but you've got a good idea there, and perhaps you've given me an idea to contact we have an online teaching and learning certificate, and perhaps students could, through those courses, contribute. Yeah. Good idea.
Yeah, and I think particularly now when students have had so much more experience of doing online activities as well, that there's a wealth of experience and knowledge that we should be tapping into just now in terms of what they would like to do. And Laura's just saying, I think again more of a comment, but maybe it's a train the trainer effort. So instead of us, like our community leading it, we need to maybe go into, the disciplines and get people in the domains to actually do that as well, to start doing that. But I think there were some comments earlier on when you were presenting, Melissa, about kind of that the language barrier. So a lot of teachers are sharing activities and content, but they're just not doing it as openly as perhaps we in this community would like, and they're not using the same language. So I think that again, that's just again one of those issues that we have to keep working at, and kind of reaching out to as many people as we can to make people aware of open education and what they're doing is actually open educational practice. Yeah. There's another question coming in here from Hope. She's saying, I'm aware of more subject-specific databases and tools for OER material. Are there maybe opportunities to interface with those, which might be?
Yeah, and Hope, if you have any of those, if you could email to me, that would be great. I'm perhaps not as aware of those specifically, so I put my email in the chat.
Yeah, I think it just takes time, doesn't it? Like all these things. And again, I think, as you said, Melissa, everyone's very tired just now, but also people are always looking for new activities. And if we are going to be doing maybe not as much online, but we're still going to be doing an awful lot of online learning and teaching over the next year, then people will be looking for things. So I think it's how we promote and share and, kind of sell these things to people. It's like, this is a great way for you to get some ideas and to help you and ultimately maybe even save you some time, but also you can hopefully share something back with the wider community as well.
Yeah, and that's just the point, to save time, right? If you've got something you can adapt. So maybe you've never done a discussion forum before. So take one of these and adapt it. It gives you some sense of what the stages would be and what the language could be to describe it and how it could be scaffolded, right?
Yeah. Just one thing, as we're talking here, Melissa, could you get people to upload like them just describing an activity, like a little video instead of, I know why you're putting in the form, but I just wonder if that would be, here's what I did, and I'm just going to record it quickly and then share it that way. I don't know what people think about that as well. You might want to share that in the chat. That obviously someone might have to go back and tag that, though. That's the only thing. But sometimes but I think it's quite powerful.
Yeah, there is an option here to upload an audio file. So I think it's possible. Yeah. And I thought about simplifying, there's lots of different, but I think it's just awareness and people having time. And I think you're right about the conflicts as well. And I've had a university student in my house this past year over the pandemic, and some of her teachers have done some really amazing things. And, and I have reached out when I've seen somebody do a presentation on a really cool activity. I've said, could you please add this here? But that it doesn't, happen.
Yeah,
It's
I know
hard.
it's a real challenge. And, there's some great comments coming through there from everybody else, but we are just about at time now. So thank you all so much for your discussion, and the chat has just taken off here. And Melissa, thank you so much for such a thought-provoking discussion. And it's really important work, so keep going. And I'm sure more people are going to start sharing, because now more people know about your resource as well.
Yeah.
So we can all maybe give Melissa a little virtual round of applause. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of the conference. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Sheila.
Nom nom nom.